The Jefferson County Historical Commission, as part of its 2021 Preservation Symposium, is pleased to present this video called From a Tree to Today, Connecting Indigenous People to Jeffco Parks, presented by Jennee Hancock. This program explores the indigenous history of Jefferson County, of its open space lands from the perspective of the Council Tree site in Morrison. You will hear about the tribes who have called this place home, the significance of the tree, the Ute leader, Colorow, the native plants at the site, and how the tribes remain connected to the land today. Jennee Hancock is an education specialist with Jefferson County Open Space. She has worked at the Haiwan Museum in Evergreen as a guide and educator since 2000. She loves connecting people with culture, history, and nature, and each other, and especially enjoys creating and teaching children's programs. She is honored to learn from and collaborate with representatives of Jeffco's indigenous tribes.
Hi, my name is Jennee Hancock, and I'm an education specialist with Jefferson County Open Space. As I begin today, I would like to acknowledge that the original caretakers of Jefferson County's open space lands include the Tabiguach and Miwach bands of the Ute Nation and the Arapaho and Cheyenne tribes, along with other indigenous peoples. As stewards of the parks today, we honor their legacy, knowledge, resilience, and enduring cultural and spiritual connections to the land. Welcome to the Council Tree near Dinosaur Ridge in Morrison. This site is a special place to learn the indigenous history of Jeffco's open space lands. According to tree ring dating, the Council Tree is over 400 years old, and it may be nearly 500. The average ponderosa pine in this area lives to be about 250, so this tree is extraordinary in its longevity. Think about all the changes this tree has seen, especially in the past 200 years. It watched the passage of late prehistoric peoples, makers of the oldest pottery found in the area, and first to use bow and arrow. It stood here quietly as waves of change brought new peoples and others were pushed away. It has endured the clamor of wagons, tourists, and today's commuters as indigenous trails became toll roads and later highways. The connection of indigenous peoples to the land in Jefferson County reaches back at least 12,000 years, when Paleo Indians hunted, gathered plants, and used winter campsites in the Hogback Valley. The connection of indigenous peoples to the land in Jefferson County reaches back at least 12,000 years, when Paleo Indians hunted, gathered plants, and used winter campsites in the Hogback Valley, leaving behind evidence of stone projectile points that remind us of their presence today. This broken replica Clovis point is an example of the kind of tools they used. Later, archaic peoples also camped in the foothills, using stone tools, including grinding tools like this mano. Artifacts from sites including Magic Mountain near Apex Park to the north, to South Valley Park south of here, provide insight into the lives of these early peoples and underscore the long story of people on the land. A cultural shift about 2,000 years ago brought an impulse from the east, with changes including cord-marked pottery and the first use of bow and arrow. These people also used winter camps and meeting grounds in the Hogback Valley. They used drainages, including South Turkey Creek Canyon, to follow resources like ripening plants and animals as they moved into the mountains in the summer. During the past 500 years, several indigenous tribes lived in this part of Colorado, including the Shoshone and Kiowa. The Jicarilla Apache controlled the plains between the South Platte and the Arkansas rivers from the 1500s to the early 1700s, when the Utes and Comanches pushed them out of the area. Other tribes hunted into northeastern Colorado, including the Sioux. The Arapaho and Cheyenne tribes had moved from homes near the western Great Lakes onto the plains about 400 years ago. they adopted a plains lifestyle and made their way to Colorado. They too traveled between the plains and the mountain parks, often calling the valleys of the foothills home. The first organized town in Jefferson County was named Arapahoe in 1859 after the indigenous residents of the area near Golden. The Council Tree is an especially good place to learn about Ute history, as the Ute people have a special tie to this place. According to Southern Ute Cultural Preservation Representative Garrett Briggs, Ute oral history places one of their ancestral bands, the Muwatch, in this area since time immemorial. Therefore, the Southern Utes claim the area's early prehistoric peoples as their ancestors. Unlike other tribes culturally affiliated with Colorado, the Utes have no migration story, and their creation story places them in the mountains. They may descend from the prehistoric Fremont people, as they share a common language root with the Shoshones, Paiutes, Comanches, and Hopis. The main historical figure associated with the Council Tree is Colorow, a leader of the Muwatch band of Utes. He called this his inspiration tree and met here with other leaders. Colorow was born around 1810 and died in 1888, and he too witnessed profound changes on the land and in the lives of his people. Born a Comanche, he was adopted by the Utes, and as an adult was known for his large stature and excellent horse trading skills. Fluent in Ute and Comanche, he also spoke Spanish, English, and several other Native American languages. Local legends of a love of biscuits and molasses attest to the immense loss of lifeway and desperation that occurred in the late 19th century. The Utes once called nearly all of modern Colorado their territory, and they hunted and moved on the land beyond the state's modern borders. Traveling in groups called bands, they circulated through the plains, foothills, and mountains, gathering plants with the seasons and following game to hunt. The Muwatch band, of which Colorow was a leader in the late 19th century, along with the Tabiguach, were the Ute bands that traveled in Jefferson County. The Arapahoe and Cheyenne tribes also lived here, hunted on the plains, and used trails in the foothills to reach resources in the mountains. According to park histories, all three groups used lodgepole pines from Elk Meadow, what is now Elk Meadow open space, for their teepees. The 1860s brought Colorado's gold rush, and an onslaught of gold seekers, homesteaders, and other newcomers overtook much of the land, decimated wild game populations, and brought disease. Early treaties promising the Utes, Arapahoes, and Cheyennes their lands were broken. New treaties made new promises that were broken again. By the 1870s, indigenous peoples had been largely forced out of the area. Within 20 years, the Arapahoe and Cheyenne tribes had lost at least half of their population and been forced out of the state. Within 50 years, the Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute bands had lost almost all their homelands in Colorado, while the Northern Utes were removed to Utah. Colorow remained a figure here through this change, and homesteaders told stories about his band visiting ranches, including the Rooney Ranch, which lies just downhill. The Utes were among the first tribes to acquire horses from the Spanish in the 1580s, and in Colorow's time, pastured them in the grasses here. The Iron Spring on the ranch was a regular stopping point for Colorow's band, as was this site. Oral histories from the Rooney family tell about the Utes using the blue mud from the Iron Spring on their skin to rejuvenate. They also tell of a Ute trail following Rudy Creek and ascending Green Mountain. The Rooneys built the stonework you see here and installed electricity for events, even wiring up the Council Tree itself and calling it the Lighted Tree. In 2012, the tree became the first natural feature to be named a county landmark. It is also part of the Rooney Ranch listing on the National Register of Historic Places. Because of its age, significance, and fragility, this place has limited access, and visitors can only enter as part of a staff-led experience. By protecting this site, we hope to ensure it will be here to teach visitors about the area's history for many years to come. The native plants that grow here also make this a special place to learn about Indigenous history of Jeffco's open space lands. Along with the council tree, many of the plants are the same ones the Utes and other tribes used and continue to use. In the spring, Utes cut into the cambium, or inner bark, of trees like ponderosas and aspens to gather the sugary sap, which can be enjoyed right away. The cambium can also be removed and then baked, boiled, or smoked and eaten. It can also be used to make compresses and tea. The sap from pines like ponderosas can be used as glue and also to seal baskets to make them watertight. This example of a watertight basket from Haiwan Museum shows the technique. The berries of the juniper tree are waxy cones and are edible. Utes grind them and add them to dishes like stew. The dried berries can also be used to make beads. The Utes eat the fruit, flowers, and roots of the yucca. They also know how to use the roots to make soap. Oral history from the Rooney family tells how the Utes taught Emmeline Rooney to use this yucca root soap to wash her children's hair. Acorns collected from the gamble oak in the fall could be soaked in water and then ground to make a flour. Also in the fall, pine nuts from pinyon pines could be collected after the first frost when the pods open, making a delicious source of protein. Currants are among the many wild berries eaten fresh or mashed, dried, or stored for winter. Sometimes the juice is extracted and then the pulp is used to make other foods. Other berries include gooseberry, chokecherry, and wild raspberry. Utes use plants including willows and sumac to weave baskets, so it seems appropriate there's a 3-leaf sumac growing just beneath the council tree. This site is a special place to learn about the Indigenous history of Jeffco's open space lands, and we are protecting it to ensure its stories continue to connect visitors to the land and its Indigenous history. Throughout our parks, numerous sites and artifacts provide evidence of the long history of people on the land. You can help protect that legacy by respecting historic sites and artifacts. A closed site is often home to fragile historic structures or protected plants and animals, and it is likely today's Indigenous tribes ask that it be protected too. Removing artifacts is not only illegal, it takes them from their context, their story. Consider this small stone flake taken by a visitor a few years ago near here. Possibly, this was the result of someone creating a stone tool on a hillside hundreds or thousands of years ago. Because it was removed from its place, we may never know the stories it might have told. Indigenous tribes consider these lands their ancestors' homes. Taking or destroying things here is like stealing from someone's grandparent. Consider yourself a guest and bring your manners and respect. If you find an artifact or special place in our parks, leave it as is. It may have been there for a very long time, and that is where it should stay. We are also working to honor and strengthen the connection today's Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute tribes still have to this place and others like it. Because most of the stories we have about this site and others come from homesteaders, ranchers, and their descendants, we're working to make a more complete picture of Colorow and Indigenous history in Jefferson County to better interpret this site. We are working with tribal representatives to share Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne insights about this place and others like it. We are collaborating with the Southern Ute tribe to seek stories about Colorow to better reflect his role in Jefferson County history. Acknowledging that the tree will someday die, We are also working to create an end-of-life plan so that saplings grown from its seeds can continue to enrich this place for visitors to enjoy and carry on its legacy. Jeffco open space parks have a rich Indigenous history that we are still learning about today. Stone rings, a fading travois and horse trail, lithics, hearths, shelters, and a landscape long traveled all have stories to tell. Plants provide a living connection between the land, park visitors, and today's contemporary tribes. Descendants of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne peoples maintain connections with this place and have stories, names, and insights to teach us. This place is not only historically important, it is sacred to many of these peoples. As we move past pandemic limitations and can offer programs again in 2022, we will make limited access to this site available through public programs. And I invite you to watch the Jeffco Open Space calendar for opportunities to visit here yourself. The next time you visit one of the parks, or just drive by, think about what you'd like to learn. Maybe the last year has been an opportunity for you to see more of Jefferson County's natural landscape. Maybe you've been spurred to consider your place in our local history. By seeking to know more about the Indigenous history of our parks, we can explore nature, culture, and our own place in the special story of places like this.